From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode 106. Today's show is brought to you by Eero, Pingdom, and FreshBooks. My name is Mike Hurley, and I'm joined by Federico Viticci. Ciao, Federico.
Ciao, Mike.
And Stephen Hackett. Hello, Stephen Hackett.
Hello, Michael Hurley.
Should have said howdy.
I should have said howdy. I messed up. Should I just start all over again? From Relay, should I just do that again? Is that good?
No.
Is that how that works? No?
No.
We're just going to push through, right?
I'm just going to go right to follow up.
Follow up.
Follow up.
So we had a couple people tweet. We will give credit to Jonathan on Twitter talking about Apple Music and how you have to be an Apple Music subscriber to get access to it. And it also seems like festival video streams will also be available only to Apple Music members. So in the past, you could download... Again, they had an iPad app, or you get it from iTunes even way back, and watch concerts. And it seems like even that is going to be locked into the Apple Music ecosystem this year, which is I
mean, this is
great.
obvious to me. Like, as soon as I saw the tickets go out, like, obviously they're going to put it behind the wall.
See, I was a little surprised by it, but I guess I was not being as cynical as the two of you.
I'm not being cynical. I'm just like...
I mean, I'm not going to pay for Apple Music to see him, so I'm not going to see him, which is a little bit of a bummer.
Would you have watched them? Do you?
If there's someone that I want to see, then yes.
All right.
I don't know why I found that question funny. I don't know why.
Well, I don't know. Like, do they have any of your old man music? Or, like...
Up next... I wanted to point people to an article by our friend Jason Snell over at iMore. He wrote his column this month about the age of dramatic Apple event reveals being over. Or something we talked about maybe even in the prompt days way far back about how, going into these events, there's not as many surprises as there used to be thanks to supply chain links and Mark Gurman doing whatever it is he does. As we're going to talk about the event here in a couple minutes, but I wanted to highlight that. I think it's a nice article, and I think that it's, it is different than it used to be, and Jason argues that that's okay. So I think I agree.
I think it is okay. I agree with that. It's sad, but at least, I'm happy that I had a time where that was a thing, right? Where it was like, what's it going to be? But now there is kind of just a different enjoyment in knowing because we have all of the stuff to talk about and think about in the run-up.
Yes.
It's just a different thing.
You can prepare your credit card.
I'd argue that we're not getting surprises for hardware anymore, but we're still getting surprises for software.
Yeah.
I mean, look at WWDC and how nobody knew what iOS 10 and Sierra, the new OS 10 at the time, were going to be like. So we're getting surprises in a different way. Maybe at the developer conference, because that's what Apple can control more.
Yeah.
We're not getting surprises in September anymore. And also, like Mike, I'm glad that I got to experience that when, the music event, when it used to be in September, and people were like talking about the new iPhone, the new iPods a few years ago. Now we're kind of doing that in a different way for software because we don't know, what's the new Apple Music redesign going to be like? What's coming to iOS? What's coming to iOS for iPad? Joke there. It's different, I guess.
I wanted to mention that I am still using To-Do for my task management. We spoke about this on our membership show, and an app that, Federico, you covered extensively on Mac Stories a while back, and you're using Todoist again. People can go, if you haven't heard it, you should go listen to the Canvas episodes. Y'all have done, 3 of them now on GTD apps?
Yeah.
We'll link to those in the show notes. They're all really good. One on OmniFocus, one on Todoist. The latest one on To-Do, Ben Brooks set in for you. And it's a great little series. So if you are looking for an iOS kind of GTD system, you should definitely check out those 3 episodes. Really informative and helpful if you're trying to pick, or if you're like me and you bounce around, but still using To-Do, still really happy with it. And I just wanted to follow up on that. So
I'm surprised. I kind of at the time I think was saying that I thought that you were going to switch away, but you're still there.
Yeah, I was ready with the remember to milk joke, but no. Okay.
They do have a big redesign that I played with, but it's just I just need a little bit more. Also, having the cow on my home screen means I have to change it out anytime I do a screenshot to avoid being made fun of, and that just felt like a lot of work, to be honest. Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about something that came up on episode 105 last week. We're speaking about privacy and online services, talking about the security trade-offs that come with some of these services. So some services can turn over data to the government. And when I say the government, I'm talking about the U.S. government. If compelled, others encrypt the data in a way which makes that impossible. For a while, Apple was somewhere in between, where some stuff they could turn over, like some iCloud backup data, but then things like iMessage were encrypted end to end. And I think Apple is moving more towards that model. And we got a bunch of feedback. We got a bunch of email and people on Twitter talking about a comment that we made, and I wanted to clarify it a little bit. I know this is going to lead to more feedback, and that's fine. But the idea that, we quote, have nothing to hide, and I can't do anything about it, so why worry about it? In saying that, none of us, I don't think, are okay that the U.S. government can go into our iCloud backups, right? Like, none of us think that's cool. None of us are really excited about that. But it is it's a trade-off that we accept because we want to use a service like iCloud backup. A bunch of people threw around this Edward Snowden quote arguing that you have nothing to hide or that you don't care about the right to privacy is like saying you don't care about freedom of speech because you have nothing to say. Like, we understand that. And I think all we were saying, we weren't speaking to that reality or speaking to that political environment. We're just talking about we understand that it's a reality and that we accept certain trade-offs for the utility that certain services offer. It wasn't a judgment call on the state of the world or one particular service or another, or the service that you're really in love with that we don't use. Like, all of that aside, like, we're just saying, with anything you use online, there are trade-offs and that you should be aware of them. And I would add, we had that Dropbox link in the show notes last week. All these companies have information on their website about that, saying who has access to what sort of things. And anytime the U.S. government can have access to something, that means that employees of that company have to facilitate that. So yes, it means that Dropbox employees, could, if compelled by the U.S. government, go into my Dropbox account and look at my documents. And yes, it does mean that if some crazy rogue Dropbox employee with that very specific power wanted to abuse it, that they could. But I trust Dropbox is having policies in place to avoid that sort of thing. So I just want to clarify that. I felt a little misunderstood and a little frustrated after last week's episode. So anyways, we can move on from privacy, but yeah, I just wanted to get that out there.
Apple have announced an event for next week. It is the event that we expected, the September event. There kind of isn't much to say. We'll be covering the event next week, probably on Thursday, so the day after, once all the little tidbits have come out of what is announced. I guess we're definitely expecting the phone, most likely expecting the watch, and maybe expecting some Mac stuff. But there was something I wanted to point out which really made me giggle. Federico was being stupid with the criminology stuff and drew a box around two of the little lights that are shown in the blurred kind of bokeh, or however you call it, blurring of the image. He drew a little box around them and said it's a dual camera confirmed because it's these two little white dots next to each other. And then the Daily Mail printed this on one of their columns, saying that Apple watchers say this is part of the invite that reveals what appears to be the much rumored double camera lens. So the Daily Mail is taking Federico's dumb jokes and printing them as fact.
Man, they didn't even give me credit.
Yeah.
How did you find it?
Well, how did I find a reader, I think, sent me a link to the Daily Mail saying, they got your joke, but they didn't credit you. It was really stupid. I literally looked at the invite and I drew a little box with the...
it is kind of perfect because they're the same color and they're perfectly aligned, right?
Yeah, and actually I got a few people messaging me privately because I assumed they didn't want to go on the record and saying, actually, I think it makes sense. I think it is a hint to the dual camera. And maybe it is, maybe it's not. I was just being silly.
I look at it and I'm like, I know it's stupid, but it is right. They're the only two that are perfectly aligned. They're the same color. I don't know. It is dumb. It's criminology stuff.
Yes.
And it was funny that you made a joke about that, which ended up being a thing.
I thought the joke was obvious in its nature of being a joke because I used the hashtag analyst at the end. I mean,
no, man, that means you're serious.
No, can you name anyone who's serious about being an analyst who tags his own tweets with analyst?
I bet there are many.
All of them.
Seriously?
Single one of them, yeah.
No, come on. That's messed up.
It's the type of people that put hashtag leadership in their Twitter bio.
No, come on.
What I like to think about in these stories are the graphic designers who do these sort of invites, and that, if they just like these things go out and they just watch Twitter to like see what people read into them, because I mean the older I get, the more I find this whole scene just really tiring. But it's like I just imagine these graphic designers, maybe they have like some sort of like betting pool, or maybe they have like a draft where it's like, these are all the things people will read into this, and then someone like Federico comes in and blows it all out of the water. And I think those designers just go home and drink the day after their invite gets sent out to the world.
Oh my gosh, the best thing in the world has just happened. I went to twitter.com and I searched the word analyst.
No.
Mm-hmm. The top tweet
for
analyst is Federico. And I even opened it in an incognito window just to check that it's not applying my timeline bias.
Hold on. Oh
the
my
top
God,
tweet
that's true.
right now for the word analyst is Federico.
That's really good.
That is amazing. Oh, teacher, you are an analyst now. Congratulations.
I guess I made it.
You've made it. You've done it.
My new line of work has been an analyst of event invitations.
Pack it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, screw my stories and everything else. I'm going to be an analyst now.
Analyst
Done
stories.
with the review.
Yeah. Well done. I'm patting myself on the back for this.
Good job.
Yeah. Thank you.
We're very proud of you.
This week's episode is brought to you by FreshBooks, the company on a mission to save time and avoid the stress that comes with running their businesses. Tomorrow is the end of the month. It is the end of August, which means I'm going to be spending some time tomorrow sitting down and sending out some invoices. I have a busy day tomorrow. I have many tasks. One of the tasks is to send those invoices. But of all of the tasks that are on my list, I know that this is one that is going to cause me some of the least frustration, is going to take some of the least time, because FreshBooks makes it so easy for me to send the invoices that I need. It takes just 30 seconds to create one. You can put your branding on them as well, so it looks great when it arrives at your client. There's so many ways for them to pay you. You can integrate a ton of different payment methods with FreshBooks, and it's why people that use FreshBooks get paid 5 days faster. You can track when somebody's seen your invoice, so you can see how far it's moving through their system, so you don't need to bug them. You know if they've seen it or not. And you can even set up automatic late payment reminders too, so you can send those out. But also, what I like, we don't do automatic stuff, but we can go in and very, very easily, we can see exactly what's outstanding, how many days it's been outstanding. It's super, super simple for us to get that information because it's all straight there on FreshBooks' page when we log in. They have tons of third-party integrations. They have amazing support. If you give FreshBooks a call, their phones will ring, someone's going to pick it up. If all the support team are busy, if they're dealing with clients, those phones for everybody in the company will start ringing until somebody answers for you. They care about it that much. Everyone in the company is there to deal with your problem if you need it. Don't talk to everyone because it would take a long time. Just talk to one person and they'll be able to fix you. Getting started on FreshBooks is extremely simple. You don't have to be a numbers person. They're offering a 30-day free trial, so you can go check it out for yourself. No credit card required. Go to freshbooks.com/connected and enter connected in the how you heard about us section so they know that you came from us, and to get your 30 days of unrestricted use. Once again, that's freshbooks.com/connected. Thank you so much to FreshBooks for sponsoring this show, supporting Relay FM, and for making my invoicing a breeze. All right, so Apple have acquired a health data company called Glimpse. And it's Glimpse with 2 I's because Web 3.0, I guess. I don't know. And they were a company that could help individuals get access to their medical records. So this is, I think it's US focused, but so this was basically a way to bring all of your stuff together. I think there are digital forms for medical records in the US, from what I can understand, but they're in a bunch of different formats, and it's really hard to kind of bring them all together in a way that you can view them. But that is their idea. So you bring all of your medical information together. It lets you look at it. You can build on it. You can personalize and customize it and share it with people and use that data in interesting ways to kind of build a better picture about your health. So Apple have acquired this company. It's obvious why they've acquired this company. And I wonder, is this a good thing? Stephen, is this the type of stuff that you want to have access to? And do you want Apple to be the company that has the access?
I do want access to this sort of thing. So I'm by no means an expert in this field, but my understanding a little bit is that the medical health record system is really fragmented in the U.S. And basically you have some standards, but all these hospitals and doctors' offices either go like purchase or sometimes build internally their own system to access that data. And so you have stuff kind of all over the place. And just because it's at one hospital and maybe you visited another doctor's office that is not part of the same system, they don't necessarily know about each other. It would be nice to have one central repository for all of that. And so I could go in to a doctor's office or, God forbid, taken to the hospital for something. And, I hand my iPhone or something to the nurse or the doctor and, they have, some way to access everything that I have about me from one central place. And they're not reliant on, finding out who my physician is and going to their office and getting their records and hoping that they're open. Like, all that would be really nice if it were all central. I think it'd be great.
And then I guess, the idea is you could take these records that come from medical assessments and use them to help build a better picture of your health so you're able to do different things, right? So
right, you could be proactive
build that data.
About
yeah,
stuff.
Exactly. You could build that data into your workouts. You could build that data into your diet. It is an interesting idea. And I have to say, like, if my data was going to be held by a company, I would want that company to be Apple. Yeah. Like my medical records, if I was going to give somebody access to that, they're the company that I would want to have it.
Yeah, it's yeah, I agree. They've done a good job with the health app, and there are some frustrations around it, like if you got to do a restore on your phone, do you lose your activity rings? I mean, there's all that stuff to worry about that they just need to work through. But I think that they're proving that they can be trusted with this sort of data, and they would need to work through some of that. I would think at some point something like this would need to have a server-side component. I don't know if it could be all on device. It's almost too important just to be on device. Like if my phone gets destroyed in an accident, and I'm in that accident, like I'm in a car crash, my phone gets destroyed, and my wife needs something, out of that record, and it was only on my phone. Is she kind of stuck? Does she need to like restore her phone to my iCloud backup to get it? Like there's lots of edge cases there that are worth talking about and thinking through. But I think overall, this is a promising idea. And I think it's one that, in these Tim Cook interviews and stuff, like this fits in with what they're doing, right? That you could see Apple moving towards a system that would support this sort of stuff, where you could import your medical records from your doctor's office and have it all available to you. And I really like the proactive thought, like you said, if something in that medical record says, oh, my cholesterol is a little high, and then maybe that becomes a factor in like the goals the watch sets for me, like all sorts of interesting things could come out of it. And I think it'd be really nice, because I mean, the truth is that a lot of people don't have a full picture of their health. A lot of people, I forget the percentage. I used to know it, but it's crazy high of percentage of like prescriptions that aren't followed through on properly. So like if you're supposed to take medication over 7 days, people stop at 3 days because they're trying to feel better. Even that sort of thing, right? That if your watch knew about your prescriptions and it could remind you, or your phone could give you a notification of like, hey, you need to take your medication at this time. All that is like really enriching. And so I'm in favor of this sort of modernization of medical records.
What do you think, Federico?
Yeah, I mean, it's great if Apple wants to do it. It makes total sense to have a company that, especially when it comes to this health stuff, they have such huge respect for user privacy and security. I think it makes total sense to, now I'm speaking from my experience in Italy, but everything is so fragmented, when you go to one hospital and you got to share data with another hospital, and then when you switch doctors, there's a bunch of paperwork. And it would be great if there was a system, like a unified system that's always with you, that you can share directly with your physician and with different institutions. it's a tall order for Apple
Yes.
to do this, because it's a mess. Like from a bureaucratic point of view, it's a mess. And I cannot even imagine not even when you do it for a single country, but when you do it for multiple countries in different continents with different regulations, it's going to take years. But if this is the kind of route that Apple wants to go down, I think it makes total sense to have that kind of integration with the Apple Watch, with the iPhone, and maybe even with iCloud. We don't know. But I think there's when you bring together all of these different pieces, the Apple Watch being, an accessory that's always on you, that can monitor your heart, and maybe in the future even more data because of more sensors, that can push you to exercise. And then you collect that data on the iPhone. And then on the iPhone, you also have medical data. And you have things like medical ID, for example, if, in case of an emergency. And you can share, this data with your doctor, and you can have reports, you can have statistics over time, and you never lose that data. I think that's powerful, and that's, we talk about technology as, oh my God, this is a beautiful markdown text editor. So we talk about, productivity stuff, but this is the stuff that really has an impact on people. Personal health, personal well-being. I think if Apple wants to do this, it's got my total support, and I think it's awesome. Also difficult, but, I think if one company can do it, that's Apple.
This would be one of those things that they announce, and then me and you are just like super sad for like 2 years. Because we don't get it,
US only.
Yeah.
With our son, his long-term care at St. Jude, that's all at one hospital, sometimes a second hospital, but they talk really well. But even there, where his whole history of his cancer treatment is under one roof, my wife and I still keep a detailed shared document between us with all of his history and his medication, because even within the one institution, sometimes that stuff comes up, and it's like, you have it all. Like, why are you asking me for his history? You know literally all of it.
It always horrifies me if I go for a hospital checkup or something and see like stacks of paperwork in folders, and it's like, why? Why is it like that?
Yeah, and so I mean, even there, we have a shared document that we update and keep his medication in, and all of that stuff. So having all that in a way that doesn't involve a Google Doc would be nice.
So as of the time that we record today, which is on the 30th of August 2016, just before we began the episode, the European Commission, who have been investigating what they say to be alleged tax issues with Apple and Ireland, has made a ruling. And their ruling is that Apple owes 13 billion euros to the Irish government, and therefore kind of the European Union in a way, for what they call illegal tax breaks that the Irish government gave to Apple. Now, this is extremely complicated, and a lot of this stuff is way over my pay grade of understanding, but I'm going to try and do my best to explain what I can see is happening here. So, Ireland is known for, maybe in like about 20, 30 years ago, and since then, has been setting up their corporate tax legislation in such a way that it is very enticing for companies to set up offices there. So Apple did this, that like many companies have done this over time, set up offices in Ireland. It helped boost the Irish economy and really has kind of pulled them out of some really sticky situations. If a lot of these companies weren't in Ireland, like there's a lot of tech companies in Ireland, there's a lot of companies in Ireland. Dropbox have their offices in Ireland for the same kind of reason, I believe. There's a lot of great talent there, and it's bolstered by the fact that it's really good for companies from a financial perspective to run there, and it is really helping the Irish economy. Now, the European Commission is saying and is claiming that the Irish government has given Apple like extra breaks, which the Irish government and Apple are saying didn't happen. And the Irish government is saying they don't want this money. Like, they don't want Apple to pay them this $13 billion. But the European Commission is insisting that they should, because the tax wasn't set up correctly. They weren't being charged correctly. And this is back taxes, and they want interest on that as well to be paid. There is an open letter on apple.com in all of the European websites today. So if you're in Europe, you can see this. It's from Tim Cook, and he's explaining kind of the fact that Apple have put a lot of time and money into Ireland, and they've put a lot of people there, and because of their Irish base, they employ 1.5 million people across all of Europe. And they are saying that the European Commission is wrong, and that this is kind of crazy stuff, and it's going to have wide-reaching effects. And Tim Cook has mentioned again how like they're the biggest taxpayer in the US, they're the biggest taxpayer in Europe, they're the biggest taxpayer in the world. They keep kind of going on that, and he throws in again about the idea of there being more tax reform and that there needs to be tax reform so money can move more freely around different companies. So this is a horrible mess. And the thing that I find just the most interesting is like Europe is getting involved in this and is passing a law down which to Ireland to say this company owes you money, but the Irish government and Apple are both going to appeal the decision.
Mm-hmm.
It's very weird. Again, like, not to get too political, but this is the type of stuff that made people want to leave the European Union, right? It's these types of rules. It's like the European Commission, because Ireland is part of the EU, is telling Ireland how to run their country. And this is kind of, in a way, I guess the way it works, because they're all one big thing. But it's just really sticky, and I know that there are a bunch of holes in the stuff that I'm talking about because I don't understand tax law completely. But that's kind of the gist of it, as I understand it. That there were tax breaks for everyone. They're, I guess, being changed, and the European Commission is saying that Apple got extra special ones, and everybody's saying no.
Yeah, what I find really interesting in Cook's letter is that he really leans into the fact that this is a very old setup. I mean, he opens the letter 36 years ago, and there's a picture of like 1980 bearded Steve Jobs looking at a workbench of people working.
And it's in black and white.
Yeah, which they had color photos then, but you ran it through your Instagram filter to make it look old. He is trying to build the case that, you know, this is if there was something fishy going on here, like this has been set up for so long that would have come to light, right? And he is reiterating that Apple has done everything that it's supposed to do, and that this is some sort of like reaching back into history and saying, oh no, you should have done it differently, and we're going to hold you to a standard that wasn't set way back then. And that's a little weird, and it's no doubt it's a lot of money. No doubt Apple could, if it comes to it, Apple's got the money, but I think for Apple it's more about the statement that it makes. That's
the principle.
Yeah, we were in an agreement, and it's not like it would be different if the government of Ireland and Apple disagreed on it, right? If Ireland was suddenly saying, no, you're right, the European these new laws, the statement coming down is true, Apple, you do owe us money. But they're not saying that. They're in agreement. And that's really what makes it so strange.
Now, I don't understand a lot about taxes, but I also kind of understand the position that this can be wrong, in the sense that, let's assume that I'm friends with the Italian Prime Minister, and like we're personally friends, and we're talking over dinner, and he goes like, look, you want to bring in more McSorris employees in Italy? I'm going to give you a discount on taxes. And we agree on that, but it's not really permitted by law. And so even if we have an agreement, because we're friends, because I'm bringing jobs, I cannot really get a discount on taxes because it's, everyone pays the same taxes. So I don't understand. Now,
well,
again,
but this is what the European Commission is saying has happened, right? Like
right.
They are saying that this is what has occurred.
Right.
Which is
there was an illegal state aid to Apple. So if that's true, it kind of makes sense, because I get it that you had an agreement, but that agreement is not permitted by law.
If that is, in fact, true.
If that is the truth, yes.
Right, because both Apple and the Irish government are saying that isn't true. Which is, I look at these things and I'm like, man,
that's... yeah.
I mean, you're saying it, and if you're being truthful here, great, but man, if there's like just one little thing, you're in trouble. I don't, I look at these things and I'm like, I tell you, my feeling about this is, right, this has clearly uncovered the fact that the system is broken, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. There is something wrong with the system. Maybe it's not to the tune of $13 billion, or euros, I should say, but there is something, obviously, that people aren't happy with. Apple aren't happy with tax. The European Commission aren't happy with tax. I feel like what this should do, these types of things should spark change. going backwards and changing stuff isn't right. Like if the Irish government was saying Apple owed them this money, and the European Commission was saying Apple owed them this money, I think I would feel differently about this and say, Apple, maybe you should pay this money. Like if everyone's saying you owe this. But the fact that the Irish government is saying that it's not owed, and it's 13 billion euros, that would really help Ireland. That's where I'm kind of like, maybe.
Yeah, but there could be so many reasons why the Irish government doesn't want money. Now let's assume the worst case scenario, and that the Irish government is corrupted and they're taking bribes from Apple not to get the money.
Yep.
And they're saying, no, we don't want the money. It's cool. But then another government in 10 years says, look, we should have got the money.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to be like paint the perfect picture, right, with this. Yeah. And kind of just be like, if this is the case, then maybe we should change tax law going forward, right? Like this is clearly highlighted an issue. But you're right. It could be someone's getting bribed, or the Irish government really don't want Apple to leave because of how much money they do make from them.
Right. Yeah.
Right? And I feel like that's why the Irish government is going to bat for Apple anyway. Not that I'm saying it's illicit, but I feel like that's why they're going to bat for them, because they want that relationship to remain.
And like Cook says in his article, A, it's a lot of jobs, but B, if this is upheld, then it opens the door for like lots of other companies in Ireland and across Europe to be at risk of the same thing, right? So if Apple pays this, or if it moves forward, then they could say the same thing to Facebook or Dropbox or Microsoft or any of these other companies that are in Ireland and across Europe, saying, hey, we know when you moved here, this wasn't the law, but we're going to retroactively tax you for things in the past. And that's is tricky. It's a slippery slope, and it's
because they probably never would have moved there, right?
Yeah. And when it's time to expand, that's not where they're going to expand. And if it's time to move people around, you know where they're going to pull out of. Yes, it's a lot of money into their coffers, but the risk on the side of the European Commission is startlingly high, and something that could have drastic effects. I mean, if Apple pulls out, it's someone in the chat room said 6,000 jobs in Cork alone. That's a bunch of people out of work, and they are those employees are caught in between the company and the country and the commission, and that's terrible.
I hope that like whatever this is, or however this resolves, like it just works out right. Like if Apple do owe this money, then they should pay it. But if they don't owe it, like I hope that it just gets fixed, because this is clearly like Apple has a lot of spotlight on them right now about tax stuff. This is like clearly a big thing for Tim and his administration now. Like everyone is just caring about how much tax money they have, and they've just got a big target on their back because they have all of the profit, right? It's just there. So all of these governments seem like that they're going after them, all these institutions are going after them to pay taxes and stuff like that now, right? Like America wants different tax from them, and there's things there, and now Europe wants different tax from them. I just hope that it can get fixed, and it looks like it will, because I mean eventually I think a lot of these institutions, they kind of have to give up to the fact of how much money Apple can give them if it's done right. And I think that this stuff just is like the scare tactic to bully them into actually doing something. At least that's my hope, because otherwise this is just going to get real messy.
I mean, it wouldn't happen if Federico had been elected vice president of special business over all of Europe.
That is true, though, actually.
Told you.
No, but I bet Federico would have those lunches with Tim like he was going to have with the French Prime Minister, and give
What's the Italian one? Sorry.
The Italian Prime Minister, and give him something. I know that you'll do that. That's what the special is in the business.
There you go.
I'm not sure about that.
Talking about dodgy relationships, let's just talk about Spotify and Apple real quick. There was a Bloomberg article that came out earlier this week about how Spotify has been retaliating against musicians who use Apple Music exclusives by making their songs harder to find. And they don't feature them, and they won't feature them in any of their featured playlists now. So like when Spotify creates those big playlists, they're not going to put their songs in there.
So let me understand. Spotify's strategy to go against Apple Music is to make Spotify worse by not having the songs people want to listen to? Okay.
Yes. In theory, like you can still find it. Like Spotify is saying they don't tamper with search results, but like anecdotal evidence is saying that these songs seem to be a bit buried. Like, this is Spotify trying to throw their weight around, right? They want to be where the exclusives are. I mean, and they still have the majority of the users, so maybe you don't want to upset them. But I think, Apple has all of the money, right? They can probably offer more money to these artists than Spotify can for these timed exclusives.
Yeah, I really don't feel like this is a good strategy to use. I mean, I do understand like the personal feeling of retaliation against Apple, but from a practical point of view, from a business perspective, not featuring the songs people want to have on your service prominently in playlists or in search, it is stupid, honestly.
It is making the product worse, but this is what happens in these company-to-company cold wars. So the Spotify app, this came out like in May, right? Do you remember the Spotify app got blocked by Apple because they were trying to get people to sign up through their website instead? Yeah. There has not been an update to the Spotify application since the 23rd of May. That update is still blocked.
I'm on the Spotify test flight, so I get to update with the beta build. But yeah, on the App Store, there hasn't been an update.
Maybe still trying to get it through, but Apple won't allow it, right? They are still blocking them.
Wow.
It hasn't been updated since May. Like, this is the fight that they're in right now. And another thing that I think this is way worse than like blocking Frank Ocean and Taylor Swift. If a lesser known artist uses the Beats One show to have their music introduced by Zane Lowe, this is also something where these retaliatory practices will kick in. So if like a new artist gets like that record of the week or the world exclusive, whatever they call it, I can't remember, world music track, I don't know.
Worldwide,
definitely that.
Always on
world music track exclusive.
Beats One.
Worldwide.
I think that's what they call it.
It's a full title, like bunch of commas and all of these words.
It's a complete thought around music.
it's a complete hashtag also.
I can't wait to do it.
You got it. I was just setting that one up. Anyway, so if a lesser known artist gets that thing that we just explained and they get played on Beats One, they will also be buried and not have their music featured. So this is Spotify clearly losing on all grounds of Apple, right? Like everything that they've tried to do is not working because they're not getting what they want. So now they're trying to go from the bottom up. They're now trying to attack the artists to try and attack Apple. It's a messy war, and unfortunately, as always with these types of things, the people that lose out are the consumers and the people that pay for their music as Spotify. I mean, at least the stuff's not being held off, right? They're not saying it's not going to be in the library, but they're just hiding it from you. This week's episode is also brought to you by Eero. These days, everything that we have in our homes require an internet connection, and that is an increasingly growing number of devices. Obviously, our phones and our computers need Wi-Fi, but also our speakers, thermostats, light bulbs, front door locks, security cameras, everything is needing them. And we're always using heavy data services now, Netflix, Hulu, Spotify, even whether their music is there or not, for our home entertainment. And Wi-Fi is the foundation of all of it. But Wi-Fi is tricky, it's broken, it's messy. If you went into a room in your house and plugged your iPhone into the wall and it wasn't going to charge because the electricity connection wasn't good in that part of the house, you would have somebody come out and fix that immediately because that's crazy. It wouldn't happen. But this is something that so many people have to deal with every day with Wi-Fi. There are dead zones. We have to sit and look at buffering for a long time because to get the best connection, the best possible connection today, you need to have some kind of distributed system, not just one router that just produces the Wi-Fi signal for your whole house that sits in the bottom corner somewhere. You need to have distributed systems so you can get the connection all over your house really easily. And this is super expensive to do, but not anymore, because now you have Eero. With Eero, you can install an enterprise-grade Wi-Fi system in your home in just a few minutes. This isn't just an extender. Each Eero box has 2 radios inside, so it keeps your connection fast, keeps everything in sync on one network name. You don't need multiple network names. It shares it all through your house. They have an iOS and Android app that will let you set it up super simply, and also so you can manage everything. And all of the updates and stuff to your system will happen overnight, which is lovely. Like, they just put a new parental control feature in, which easily lets you manage different access for different family members in your home. This stuff is all done up overnight on the system when it's not being used, so your Eero box is constantly kept up to date. Now, Stephen, I know that you have an Eero. What was kind of like some of the process like? What's some of the benefits that you've seen?
It's super easy to set up, which is nice. A lot of these systems are using multiple access points it requires some sort of controller or, like central unit to tell them what to do. And with the Eero, it's just an iPhone app. So you set one up on your iPhone, and then you go and you plug in a second one. It does a good job of telling you kind of where they should be. So our new house is sort of shaped like an L, and I put the first one up and it said, hey, you need to be within kind of this number of feet. It's helpful if you have line of sight, and it all just walks you through it in a very friendly way on the iPhone app, which is nice. And it doesn't require an Ethernet drop at every place. So my old house had an Ethernet network that I put in. The new house does not have that. I haven't done that yet. And it doesn't really matter because it uses this wireless network to share information between the two that you don't see as the user. And it's just really like friendly to use. That's the adjective I keep coming back to. A lot of this stuff is so hard and so complicated. And even Apple's own airport system, to do more than one of them gets a little crazy. And with Eero, that's what they're designed to do. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure it out.
The average house in the US is easily covered by 2 or 3 Eero devices, so a 3-pack that they'll sell you is a really good starting point. If you live in a large space, you can add up to 10 in total. And because of Eero's 30-day money-back guarantee, you can always return one or more if your Eeros you don't need as many as you thought you did, right? If you buy a 3-pack but you only need 2, just send one of them back. 30-day money-back guarantee, nice and simple. If you want to find out more about how to get an Eero for yourself, just go to Eero.com. That's EERO.com. And because you listen to this show, you'll get yourself free overnight shipping. Just select overnight shipping when you get to the checkout and enter the code CONNECTED, and it will be applied. Thank you so much to Eero for their support of this show and Relay FM. So, Apple Watch 2 rumors. Stephen, would you like to take this away?
I would like to take it away. So, kind of building on a couple of different stories. We had one a couple weeks ago saying that the Apple Watch 2 would come out and the Apple Watch 1, the current Apple Watch, would be upgraded somehow but stay on sale. And then this report out just a couple of days ago has some more detail about what the Apple Watch 2 could bring to the table. So bigger battery, GPS, barometer, bigger batteries in my list twice for some reason. I guess we're really excited about that.
Bigger battery, bigger, right? And the more you say it, the bigger it gets.
And it's the first hardware leak we've had of the Apple Watch. These battery components popped up online. So there's some strategy in play here, and I think it's fun to talk about because this is the first time we will have had an Apple Watch revision. Really, they've added new stuff, new bands and new cases, but the first time we've had maybe a new product in this line. And it really seems like they're going to do the iPad thing. So is this like revised Apple Watch 1 going to drop below the current prices, which as of our recording, 38 millimeter is $299, 42 millimeter is $349. Will Apple Watch 1 revision, special edition, whatever, will that fall below that price point so Apple can get in the door cheaper and compete more directly with Fitbit in that price range? Does the Apple Watch 2 come in more expensive and the Apple Watch 1 is there just to hold those price points? Like, I don't know. Does the Apple Watch 1 become the zombie iPad 2 that never dies and, people get sad that the A5 is still around? I don't know. It's just fun to debate that strategy. So I was curious what you guys thought about, what we could see from a strategy perspective with the Apple Watch 2.
Seems like the Apple Watch 2 is going to be the first Apple product not to get thinner on a revision. So it sounds like from the rumors we're going to get the same design, but just with more stuff inside, which I think makes sense because I really don't need my watch to be thinner at this point, I guess. I also think that having a cheaper watch makes sense for consumers. I don't know if it's the best idea in terms of app ecosystem, in terms of software performance over time, because we're getting a bunch of nice improvements with watchOS 3, but it still remains a pretty slow device. The S1, the built-in system on a chip, it's not gonna stand the test of time in 3 to 4 years, and I really don't want to see a repeat of the iPad 2 situation. So maybe it's just going to be a stopgap solution, to have an Apple Watch first generation at a discounted price this year, and next year, or maybe in 2 years, just going to go away and we'll have an Apple Watch 2 at a discounted price. So I think it makes sense for now for Apple. It makes sense for people like my mom. My mom got a bought a used Apple Watch because she didn't want to pay the full price. So I think it makes total sense to have a cheaper option. I'm just afraid, it's going to be a problem for apps. But then again, maybe people just don't use that many apps on the watch. So maybe people just use Apple apps, and those are going to be fine with watchOS 3. I think it makes sense. I don't think we're going to see this apply to the edition model at all. Like, I don't even know if the edition is going to be available in the Apple Watch 2.
Yeah. I mean, they've already kind of dried up, right? It's hard to get your hands on one now.
Right. I think it's going to be a one-off thing that Apple did for the first generation model. Kind of be a collector's item.
I'll get right on that, adding it to the collection.
Oh, no.
Oh, God. And that's how we said goodbye to Steven.
So, Federico, you said that you don't want your watch to be thinner. And I understand that. I mean, I do. But I want other things more. So, like, I do want it to be thinner. It could be way thinner. This thing is huge, right? Like, it could be way thinner than this. I would be very happy if it was. However, I want faster performance and therefore probably better battery. I want all of that instead. I want my watch to be more useful, and in the same form factor, I'm fine with that. Like, I want to be less frustrated with my Apple Watch, because when I'm less frustrated with it, I use it more and more, and I want to keep using it more and more. There are things I want to do on it that can't be done, or I try to do and they just fail too many times. I want all of that stuff to be fixed, and if it means that we keep the same form factor for another iteration, I'm happy with that.
You know what I'm going to say two unpopular things that I want from the Apple Watch? I want louder speakers.
So do I.
Because
it's not unpopular. I definitely want that. Because I take calls on mine and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Hold on. But I also want a camera. And I'll tell you why. I don't want a selfie camera. I want a camera I can point and, capture things from my hand. Like, I want a camera on my hand all the time. And I feel like...
What are you creeping?
No, not at all. Actually, for the opposite scenario. Like, you're, in any kind of emergency situation, you got to take a picture without taking out your phone or reaching for your phone, or you want to show something to someone in a hurry. I think having a camera always on you, not with you, but on you, could be just as important as having, the SOS feature of watchOS 3, for example. So
I understand that, but I want a camera they can't give me. I want a camera that's good. If they're going to put one on here, I want it to be able to take a decent picture, which it's just not going to be able to do initially.
Right. Sure.
The camera's going to be horrific,
Sure. And maybe it's just going to be a FaceTime camera, but,
That's why I think that if they do ever put a camera on this thing, like in its first iteration, it will be a selfie camera, like a FaceTime calling camera, because the camera technology will be not good to fit it into that package.
Agreed. The thinness is something that I only think about if I'm wearing like a long sleeve dress shirt and it's a little bit bulky, but I think that, if it comes to like thinness or band compatibility, I think I want band compatibility for another year.
I think I can make it thinner and still have band compatibility though.
I mean, to a degree. I mean, looking at the side of it, there's definitely, they could taper some of the little Airstream trailer off the edges, but I don't know. What's more interesting to me is the potential for things like the GPS and better battery life. I don't, if I go for a bike ride or a walk or something, I always take my phone as well. So GPS on the watch wouldn't solve the use case for me that, someone may need to get a hold of me or I may need to get a hold of somebody, especially bike riding. Like, accidents happen, people can get hurt, and it's important to have the ability to call somebody or call 911 or at the very least, like, someone with Find My Friends could open it and see where I am if I am, late getting home or something like that. And so for me, the watch GPS doesn't solve that, but it would be nice for it to be able to track. If you don't care about any of that stuff, you just want to go for a run and you want, Nike Fitness or Map My Ride or Map My Run or whatever the current popular one is.
Ride My Map.
Strava. If
123 Run Tracker.
123 Run Tracker is by far the best.
Yeah,
editor's
Pimp My
choice
Run
in the App Store.
also.
Yep, that's the Federico version. Yep.
Wow.
You go out running in Gucci shoes.
Wow. You were going to need to call 911 at the end of that.
Yeah, like immediately.
So having all of that sort of stuff on the watch is really compelling, and so like I'm looking forward to it. But if the only difference between the 1 and the 2 is GPS and maybe not speed, if the speed was the same, I think I'd probably skip it. But I assume that the 2 is going to be drastically faster with better battery life. And as good as WatchOS 3 is on existing hardware, it would only be better on something that is faster in of itself. I'm really unsure about upgrading. I've got the stainless steel one. I like it. I'm very curious as to how they're going to sell upgrading to someone like me who, like, the GPS isn't a deal breaker.
A faster chip is all I need to upgrade. Like, telling me the watch is going to be faster, more capable. That's the kind of the barrier to buying for me. That's kind of the main thing that I want to see. Like we're saying about better battery life, we don't need that, like, because the battery life is great, but you need it if it gets more powerful, right? So that those two things need to go together, I think.
And more importantly, you need more battery if you want to have a watch that's always on, right? Because you want to have a watch face that's on all the time, even in a low power kind of fashion, like Android Wear does.
I'm not even expecting that that's a thing that they're going to give me, but it's something I really, really want.
Yeah,
I don't think it's going to be this time.
I mean, so much of the appeal of wearing a watch is the fact that people are able to look at your watch face, right? Whether the design, the colors, and right now you're just wearing a screen that's turned off all the time. So sure, people can look at the steel, at the chrome. People can look at the bands, but looking at the watch face, it's a whole other story. So if you want to have a watch face that's always on, you're gonna need more battery. And GPS seems pretty much a given at this point. I also heard from a reader a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure if this is still the case, but apparently. At WWDC, Apple announced that even on the Watch 1, thanks to iOS 10 and WatchOS 3, you were able to go for a run, and even without GPS, the watch was able to track your run without having to carry the iPhone with you. And the feature was working up until Beta 3, Beta 4, and then according to this person, I haven't tried because I didn't have the time, the feature was removed. So my interpretation is GPS is coming to the Apple Watch 2, but they don't want to have the Watch 1 to kind of have a workaround for that to make the feature even more exclusive for the Watch 2. I don't know if this person was correct. I don't know if the feature came back, but this person was really upset because he told me this was one of the best features of WatchOS 3 and iOS 10, and now it's gone because I assume Apple wants to make it exclusive to the Watch 2 with native GPS.
Well, they will enjoy the Watch 2 a lot then. I guess this person.
It was really. I mean, it's a great feature. If you're a runner, I can imagine you go out with your watch, you sing some music. You don't have to carry your iPhone on an armband with you, and I mean, it does sound convenient. Honestly,
I would be very upset if the bands don't work with the new watch. That would be, I don't think they're going to do that. I think it'd be crazy, but I'd be very upset.
No, bands are the new Lightning connector. They gotta stay compatible for several years.
I agree with that, and I think especially if you're going to be introducing them regularly with the intention for people to build up a collection, then people are still going to buy them anyway. You don't need to obsolete them. So I hope that's the case. My only real concern now, and this is something that Jason mentioned on Upgrade, is the idea of like if they just keep the Sport as the Watch 1, and then the Watch 2 is the other models.
Yeah,
so the Sport is the cheap one. But then, what if I can only buy stainless steel, which I don't like? That would be upsetting to me.
What do you mean? I don't follow.
So let's say they kept the Sport around as the cheap one and didn't make a new Sport model, and maybe they made it another stainless steel model, which was the Watch 2.
No, I don't think. I agree that if the Apple Watch 1 stays around, it would only be in the aluminum. But I think that the aluminum is I mean, it's got to be the most popular one by far. So I don't see them leaving that behind. I think that Apple Watch 2 would also be in aluminum. And I mean, when the iPad 2 stayed around, it looked more or less like the iPad 3 and 4, right? Like I don't think that's new territory for them to break into. So
I completely hope that you're correct.
I don't think your concern is something that you should stay up at night over.
Okay, thank you.
Sleep well, my friend.
I can now. Now I can sleep easy. Somebody wrote in, Rob asked and said, do you think that Apple will sell Apple Watch 2 without a band or bracelet for people that already have bought bands. What do you think?
I don't know. So maybe you could sell it without a band for people who want to use it as a necklace, I guess.
No, but like people that already have the bands, right? We have. I
think it makes sense, but it seems un-Apple in the implementation, kind of.
Yeah,
I mean, it would be kind of maybe not though, because it would be kind of like a Mac Mini. You just buy the computer, quote unquote. I mean, in the good way, not in terms of updates, but like the Mac Mini in the sense that you just buy the CPU, the thing, and then you gotta connect all of the different accessories. I don't think it's too absurd. It'd just be weird to buy a watch without bands. I mean, think about how weird it would look on the box. Like just a screen, just a square.
I don't see them. I mean, I see what the question is getting to, but I think they're gonna sell it with bands for everyone. And honestly, I bought my stainless steel with the black sport band. And I've bought several since then. Like the white sport band, which is my favorite, it's kind of grungy and gross. And I actually have a little nick in it. So like if I had to buy it with a watch band again, I'd probably do it with the white one so I can like refresh that one and retire the old one.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to do this, but I thought it was an interesting thought experiment at least.
So we're expecting the Apple Watch 2 to be announced next week.
Mm-hmm.
Come out in October, let's say.
Yep.
Alongside WatchOS 3 maybe. And then, so we're in 2016, we're going to see a new Apple Watch in 2018. That's the idea, every 2 years?
Maybe.
I think so.
I mean, what kind of schedule does the Apple Watch have?
Well, I think the initial schedule was skewed because they announced it kind of off kilter, and then they released it at a weird point, and then they had to go around a little bit longer. It's like the iPad Pros are going to be like this, right? They were debuted in September, and they won't get updated until like March, right? Like, so I think that it's going to be that kind of thing. I think they might go yearly with it, maybe at least initially, whilst there's still a bunch of stuff that they can add on a relatively quick cycle. Maybe.
We'll see.
Stephen, you have a dilemma, is what our document says.
It is true. So my wife is on her second Fitbit HR, which they actually just announced the replacement for yesterday. It's the Fitbit. It's got the heart rate sensor, got the little screen in it. And she has had the first one failed. It would stop syncing, and basically it would act crazy. It would lose time and add time and just like vibrate endlessly. And so connected Fitbit, they replaced it, no questions asked. And her second one is starting to show the same symptoms of what I have dubbed Fitbit madness, where they just start to lose their minds a little bit. And so she's frustrated with it, which is understandable. And I suggested to her, it's like, well, maybe we replace it with an Apple Watch, because she really likes that the Fitbit HR shows you who's calling. So if her phone is in her bag or somewhere else in the house, she can see who's calling, and she likes that. And she liked the idea of being able to see iMessages the same way. And so she is pretty interested in the 38 millimeter Sport Apple Watch. And now's a really terrible time to buy, probably, unless the old Apple Watch stays around. And you see these things going on sale. So Apple dropped the price a while back. Earlier this week, I think still Best Buy has them for like $60 less than Apple's list price. Best Buy does this sometimes to bring people in the store and sell you their fancy warranty, but it's tempting there as well. She doesn't really care about GPS. We talked through that, and she has the same concerns that I do, that you can't make a phone call still. There's no way to like really know, I don't think, unless they're doing something crazy that I can't foresee. This is going to be part of Find My Friends that is still tied to the iPhone because it has a data connection. And so she has the same concerns I do, that GPS isn't quite enough for her to leave her phone behind on a run. And so she's not particularly interested in GPS either. And so I've been debating, do I wait and see, which is what I'm going to do. It's not really a real debate. I'm going to wait and see what Apple does, and if the Watch 1 comes down in price, or they replace it. If they replace it, then surely something else, somebody else like Best Buy or somebody else will take even more off, and I'll just get a 1 on sale if that's what she wants. But I just found it interesting that after 2 years, she has started thinking about it right at the time of potential new watches. And so I will be watching what they do with the old ones very keenly and seeing if they will do anything with the old ones. I really think they're going to come down in price. I think they've got to compete with the $199 Fitbit area. And if that means buying an old watch, then I think that's fine for a lot of people. So I guess we'll see. It's a pseudo dilemma, really, not a real dilemma.
Yeah, and the same kind of thing. I don't know what it would take Adina to upgrade hers. Like, I don't know if she has any interest of doing it, really. And I don't think that any of the features that I want, she would care about enough to actually change it.
Yeah. Because if you're not using a lot of apps, if you're using it for fitness tracking and you're using it for like incoming notifications.
And having your calendar on your watch face kind of stuff,
The speed isn't that big of a deal. Like, I have gotten even less angsty about the speed because I've just stopped using apps on it. Like, it is for notifications and fitness, and it's fine for that.
And WatchOS 3 is probably going to make it a lot better.
Yeah, and that's the other side of this coin, right? That WatchOS 3 on existing hardware is faster, and does it cross that threshold into like acceptable usage? It may, and it definitely for somebody who is not going to use it heavily, then I think it would definitely be more than fine. Like, what I think is going to happen is WatchOS 3 is going to extend the life of the original Apple Watch, not make it shorter, right? People complain that new iOS updates run slower on older hardware, and that's true sometimes, and that sort of forces them to update, right? So iOS 7 comes out, and everybody with the iPhone 3GS or whatever has to update. Definitely happens. I think the opposite is going to happen here, where the Watch 1 is so much better all of a sudden on WatchOS 3, then people will be happy just to update their software and get another year out of it. And, that it's an interesting change, but something that I think will satisfy a lot of people for another 12 or 18 months.
Should we take a break?
Let's take a break.
This week's episode is also brought to you by Pingdom. You can start monitoring your websites today at pingdom.com/connected, and you'll get a 14-day free trial. And when you enter the offer code connected at checkout, you'll also get 20% off your first invoice. Pingdom is all about making the web faster and more reliable for anybody who has a website. They do this by offering powerful and easy-to-use tools and services that will monitor the availability of the performance as well of your server, database, or website, and they will make sure that it stays up and that it's running nice and sweetly. Pingdom takes care of all of this by using more than 70 global test servers that emulate visits to your site, checking its availability as often as every single minute. This is how Pingdom detect around 13 million outages a month, which is more than 400,000 every single day. Stuff breaks on the internet all the time. You need Pingdom to be there to watch it for you and just take care and give you that polite little nudge if something breaks. And this isn't just your website going down. This could be maybe your contact form or your e-commerce login or checkouts and all that sort of stuff. Maybe search functionality. Any of these things can be independently monitored by Pingdom, because sometimes it isn't just the fact that your whole website might go down. It might just be that people can't check out with your commerce, and that means you're not making any money. Pingdom can monitor all of these things. You just need to give Pingdom the URLs you wish to monitor. They'll take care of the rest. You'll be notified immediately when there is an outage, so you can fix that downtime before the error affects you. You don't want to be caught out when somebody wants to access your site, so you need Pingdom. Check it out today. You'll be the first to know when there's a problem. Go to pingdom.com/connected for a 14-day free trial and use the code connected at checkout to get yourself a lovely 20% off. Thank you so much to Pingdom for their continued support of this show, of Relay FM, and also for letting us know that our site's running nice and sweetly, which it does every week with its little email, and it makes me feel very happy when I see that it was all fine. And it means that everybody did a good job, and it's like a little pat on the back from Pingdom. So even if things don't go down, you'll get a little pat on the back every week when you've done it right, and that's a nice little incentive to keep working. Thank you, Pingdom. Mark Gurman has been on fire recently, posting many things, and he surprised us all yesterday with some news about the upcoming refreshments to the Mac lineup and the iPad lineup as well. So I want to break this down into the two different sections that Mark touched on. We'll start off with the iPad. It starts off with, and Federico, I know this is important to you. Apple may roll out the new iPad software features. So this may increased iPad software. It doesn't give any details on what they might be, really. As part of an upgrade to the iOS 10 operating system in the first half of 2017, or save the enhancements for the next major iOS version later in the year.
Yeah.
I say spring or get the fudge out. That's how I feel. If we don't get these, if we have to wait until September for this stuff, I will be a very unhappy bunny.
I mean, last time I heard, the plan was to, and I wrote this on Mac Stories, the plan was to kind of split up iOS 10 in iPhone stuff in September and iPad stuff in the spring. And it seems like Gurman heard the same thing, but he has the addition of, which seems like maybe a backup, one of those backup plans that you gotta have in an article like this.
Hedging your bets, you could say.
Exactly. If it doesn't come out next spring, it's gonna be in iOS 11. But it's definitely at least some pockets of people within Apple have shared, with other people, not just me, but I'm pretty sure Jason heard the same. That was the plan, to kind of have iPhone in September and give more time to engineers and designers to work on iPad stuff for spring, to make it, coincide with an iPad event, with new iPads, and maybe with, like last year, maybe there could be a reveal of iOS 10.2, 10.3 in January, to have like an open beta so developers can adapt, and then have a public reveal and public launch in March or April. I think it makes sense, but Gurman doesn't go into the details really of what these software features for the iPad could be. I mean, it does mention the Apple Pencil, which I know, Mike, you have a few thoughts on.
The planned iPad update will include improvements to the Apple Pencil, a handwriting and drawing stylus aimed at professionals, according to one of the people. Apple has considered allowing users to annotate objects in many applications across the whole operating system, including in Mail, Safari, iMessage, similar to what Samsung offers on its Note smartphones, the person said. Currently, Apple only supports pencil functionality in specifically developed apps. I do have lots of thoughts on this. I think that this, and the early testing of this, and the attempted implementation of this, is what broke pencil input in the previous betas. In the what beta was that? Was it iOS 9, wasn't it? So this was, or was it released versions? I can't even remember.
9.3.
9.3. The beta's for 9.3. Thank you, Federico. And that eventually came back. Apple said they were working on some stuff, and that's why. And now it's blah blah blah. So I don't think that this additional feature would stop the input that I've been using and many of us use, because I don't think they want to get into that again. I think that there's two likelihoods here. I think the least likely would be that there is some kind of software button that you hit in the OS. This could maybe be in Control Center, or I thought that maybe it could be in the split view. Like you slide over to split view, you hit this button, and it freezes the UI, and you're then able to draw on it or take notes on it, that kind of thing. But what I actually think it's going to be is a new pencil which has a button on it, and when you hit that button, you can mark up whatever's on the screen. And the reason I think this is because it allows Apple to sell more pencils to the next upgrades of the iPad, and it will keep that ASP up. I think there's going to be all new function, so I think we're going to see a smart keyboard with the function row, not the touchscreen one, but just like a general function row. So I think with every update, there will be new peripherals, like updates to the peripherals as well, because it keeps the ASP up. I think that's what Apple care about, because if they had the same pencil and the same keyboard, I'm just buying the iPad, and I think they want everyone to buy a whole new suite of products every single time. Am I crazy?
Yeah, could be. No, it could be. I mean, they could even justify the new pencil model with, I don't know, reduced latency, like a better recognition of touches, whatever, better pressure sensitivity. They could bundle up other features in addition to, special markup mode. It just, I do wonder if Apple is institutionally against the idea of having a button on a pencil. If only because of that beautiful white polished design.
Well, I mean, it could be on the top. It could, and it wouldn't really change much.
Definitely interesting when you consider that Apple has been prototyping different versions of the pencil. One with an eraser. They definitely played around with an iPad cover with the pencil holder. So there's been a lot of tests within Apple to kind of reimagine the idea of a pencil and to kind of make it more part of the iPad with more versatility over the past few years. And I think it'll be interesting to see kind of what Apple lands on for the next iPad Pro and the next Apple Pencil. If they think maybe having a button at this point is as a safe it's the good idea. I think it makes sense. I think it makes sense to have special annotation modes in different apps, especially when you consider that the iPad is being used, more and more in the enterprise to be able to mark up PDFs, to be able to mark up Safari web pages, and to kind of move more naturally between touch input and pencil input with the special mode. I think it makes sense. But I also want to see more integration between the way that you carry the iPad around, because right now it's all very fragmented, right? You got to put the iPad with the smart cover, then you got to remember the pencil. There's a risk that you're going to use the pencil tip, you're going to use the pencil cap. I think there needs to be a better way to carry the pencil around. And I also do wonder, this is unrelated to the pencil, but I also do wonder if eventually we're gonna have some kind of 3D touch on the iPad Pro, because Gurman doesn't mention 3D touch at all. He mentions faster displays, which to me sounds like maybe we're gonna get a resolution bump, and maybe we're gonna get, like I said, reduced latency. Because when he mentions faster displays, it means the pencil performance is gonna be even better than it is right now. So that sounds great. But will we ever get 3D touch? Now, I've heard from quite a few people that were, all kinds of iPad prototypes with 3D touch. But the main question is, it's a problem of ergonomics, really. How do you apply pressure on an iPad, on a smart cover, without risking, making it fall over the table? And there's all kinds of, differences between the iPhone and the iPad. It's the same reason why, even if technically Race to Wake in iOS 10 could have worked on the iPad, it doesn't really make much sense, because how do you raise an iPad on a desk to turn it on? So there are these ergonomical differences between the iPhone and the iPad when you got to keep in mind. And I think it especially makes sense for 3D touch to have this kind of, drawing a line on the sand and saying, okay, 3D touch is iPhone only. But as we're seeing with iOS 10, there's going to be a lot more features dependent, or at least made better by 3D touch. So the fact that you don't have those features on the iPad kind of makes the experience worse, because you can 3D touch on Control Center while you cannot do the same on the iPad. You can 3D touch notifications on the phone while you cannot do the same on the iPad. You got to swipe. And I know, Mike, that you're no fan of the swipe to expand notifications.
Don't like it.
Exactly. So eventually there has to be some kind of way to replicate 3D touch on the iPad. And a few people say, well, that's going to be pressure sensitivity with the pencil. Well, it doesn't really, it's not an optimal solution, because the pencil, again, is going to be something that you use to annotate, to draw, because you got to understand, Mike, that you and CGP Grey, I think, are in the minority of people who use the pencil for navigation. I totally understand what you do, but I don't think it's the majority of people use a pencil that way. So I wonder. Basically, I wonder. That's what I do. I sit down and wonder.
I just want to touch on why you said minority. I agree, but we are a vocal minority.
Yes, you are. As we've seen, you are.
Very vocal. Yeah, I agree with you. There's got to be something there, but I don't know what it is. There's also a rumor, and we haven't mentioned this yet until now, but Gurman's now talking about it. And I don't think it's coming from the same sources. He's quoting, is it Ming? Is it Ming-Chi Kuo? I'm going to go with
maybe Ming-Chi Kuo.
Ming-Chi Kuo, I think. And who does he write for? He's an analyst, right?
He's an analyst.
Ming-Chi Kuo, I'm going to go with. And they have spoken about a 10.5-inch iPad Pro as a rumor. And I've been thinking about this, like, why would they do a 10.5-inch iPad Pro? Like, so we have a 9.7, a 10.5, and a 12.9? That's insane. So I've been thinking about this, and the way that I've settled upon this is that the 9.7 is kept for the Air model going forward, and 10.5 and 12.9 become the Pro sizes. So they actually have two sizes of Pro. They have the regular one and the Mini. And the reason I think they might do this is 10.5 inches, whilst it's not a lot bigger, it will allow for bigger keyboards, software and hardware, which would be nicer, and just that little bit more extra space on the screen for split view and stuff like that. So 10.5, 12.9, okay. And I think they won't do a 9.7 anymore. Federico, what do you think?
I don't think the 9.7 format, it's going to stay on the Pro line. I think going slightly bigger for the small Pro makes more sense. Again, especially when you consider split view and the software keyboard with the shortcut bar, having just a little more space helps. I don't know if the iPad Mini is gonna stay around, honestly, because it feels like it's really being cannibalized by the bigger iPhones, and it seems like the iPad is moving more towards kind of at least prosumer, if you will, kind of scenario. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think this too, but then I also think to myself, there's probably also a strong chance that the iPad Mini is the biggest selling iPad. Like, I agree with you. That's how I feel. Like, Adina has an iPad Mini, and I think it's ridiculous. Like, it's basically the size of the phone, but she loves it. And I really wonder, because it's the cheapest, and it's small, and it probably is really easy for kids. Steven, is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a Mini that the kids use, and it's nice for that. My big problem with the theory is, are you going to strand, like, is the 9.7 Pro that we have now, is that just going to be stranded in time? Like the one, and that's sort of weird, right? Because they made such a huge deal when they announced it that 9.7 is the ideal size for an iPad, so we had to bring the Pro features to this size. And it's not like they haven't done 3 sizes stuff. Like, they had 12, 15, and 17-inch PowerBooks, but 10.5 and 9.7 are really close.
I don't think you'd be able to pick them out. Like,
no, and maybe those size differences are inherently more noticeable on the iPad than they were on the PowerBooks because of the touch deal, right? You're touching the glass the whole time, so any additional size feels better. But I kind of think this whole thing comes down to, like, there's some sort of weird misunderstanding in the supply chain and this rumor, and I just don't know if they're going to do it. That said, like, I went from the 12.9 to the 9.7, and I said on Mac Power Users a couple weeks ago that, like, I could kind of get behind an iPad Pro in between the two sizes, but it seems like it's awfully messy if they're going to do all 3. It seems like it's messy if the Pro gets a little bit bigger and then the 9.7 becomes the Air 3, or I think more likely the 9.7 would go away.
Yeah, it would just disappear.
But it's so, like, there's a lot of weirdness in there. I don't think there's any clean way this gets done, but who knows? It just seems right now I write it off as, like, some numbers got weird somewhere, or somebody measured the back case and not the screen, or, like, something is off somewhere in this story.
Let's talk about the Mac.
I remember that.
Hello, Macintosh. Updates coming as soon as October, is what was being said by Gurman. A part of the line, so he's talking about a big line refresh, and he mentions new iMacs with USB-C and the option to have better AMD graphics chips. Mm-hmm. Mentions the MacBook Pro, which we'll get to in a moment, but also a USB-C MacBook Air.
Shocking.
What? What? I don't understand.
So my only thought about why the MacBook Air may still be alive is, so the thought was the MacBook Pro is going to get so much thinner and lighter. It's going to kind of be like a MacBook Air, and so the MacBook Air doesn't need to exist anymore. If the current thinking, I think, is that the MacBook Pro, this new one, is not going to be tapered. It's going to be a little thinner and a little bit lighter, but it's not really going to be in MacBook Air territory yet. And so if you really want it thin and light, you're stuck with the MacBook, which is running the Core M5 processor, the much slower processor. With the MacBook Air, you can get an i5 or an i7. You get a loaded MacBook Air, speed-wise, it's a pretty good machine. And removing the MacBook Air would leave a gap in between. And I think that the MacBook Air is extremely popular. I see MacBook Airs just everywhere, it seems. And to remove it without having something that really fits the spot in the lineup that it held, may be a little weird. And so my thought is now that the MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air will kind of keep the same relationship they've always had. Yes, the Air is thinner and lighter, but still really powerful. The MacBook is like if you want thin and light and don't care about anything else. And the MacBook Pro is I need all the power I can get to go. And so I think the relationship between the three will stick around. I do think that if they update it to USB-C, that's got to be the last one. Like, I think that we are getting much closer to the end of the MacBook Air's life than the beginning of it, but maybe the end is just not here quite yet. And what's interesting, as we've been recording, actually, this just popped up. There's a link over on The Verge, it's in the show notes. Intel's announced Kirby Lake, which is the successor to Skylake, which is the CPU family that Apple more or less skipped. What we've been waiting on are Skylake MacBook Pros. And now if they announce Skylake MacBook Pros, I'm going to be really sad because now, what is it, KB, K-A-B-Y, KB Lake is out. So maybe they're going to go with this instead of the Skylake. Maybe they're skipping Skylake completely. Who knows? I will leave the processor talk to ATP. They do a really good job at breaking down the differences and why we should care. It's all a little bit over my head, but clearly it's time, right? It is time. I don't think we're going to see Macs shipping before Sierra. We're going to get to that in a minute with the MacBook Pro. But so what do they do? I guess that's the question, right? Do they announce MacBooks Pros and iMacs and whatever at the event and say, hey, they're going to be shipping in 4 weeks with Sierra? They could totally do that. There's a long history of that. Apple saying, we got new Macs going to ship next month. They've done it for years and years and years. And I think that if Apple's only going to have one event, they should do it in the event. Especially the MacBook Pro, if it's going to get the overhaul that everyone says it's going to get, it a little too big for press, like, individual press meetings. So like they'll invite somebody like Jason down and they'll show him the machine. He gets to write about it at an embargo, and so does The Verge and Engadget and everybody else. If the MacBook Pro has all these new features, why not give it stage time? It's your most popular computer. It's the one that there's a lot of pent-up demand for. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it is wild to me the number of people I know in the creative space that are not even nerds. Like, they don't listen to this show, but they make video, or they're photographers. Like, they work, and they all need new MacBook Pros, and they've all been waiting for new MacBook Pros. I talked to a guy this past week. He's running a mid-2010 MacBook Pro, and he's like, I was going to update this year, and they never came out. And so he's just waiting. Like, there's demand for these things, so why not give the people what they want? Even if it's not shipping today, that's fine. Say, hey, you can put your pre-orders in, or at the end of the month they're gonna ship in these configs and these prices. And I don't know, it's exhausting waiting for a new MacBook Pro.
I don't follow Mac stuff, but from my perspective, especially if it's this new computer as a programmable keyboard row, to give an embargo to the press and to let the press know that there's an SDK addition that developers gotta work with, it's weird. And just because there's a programmable keyboard row and developers need to update their apps to take advantage of those functions, it makes total sense to me to have even, like 20 minutes on stage, Apple goes out, shows his new computer, says, and by the way, developers, you can now check the Sierra pre-release docs because there's an API to take advantage of the function row. And just like they did with the MacBook and Force Touch, 20 minutes on stage, there's a developer SDK, go out, check it out, but it comes from Apple on stage. It doesn't come from, and total respect, but it doesn't come from Jason Snell on 6 Colors that says, oh, by the way, there's an SDK, you should go check it out. It just seems odd to have you could call it like a developer feature, and to have bloggers and the tech press take care of that. I don't know. Doesn't sit right with me.
But more than that, even, like, just from a fundamental level, you're making a big change to a product line. You're adding this new feature that's never existed before.
Exactly. I mean, I don't know. It makes total sense to me to have it on stage.
I'm, like, going against everybody's saying it's not happening. I just think they're not shipping till October. Like, I think they're going to have them on stage next week. I do want to go back real quick to the MacBook Air, because putting USB-C on it, will they put a Retina screen in it?
No.
They're going to ship new Macs without Retina screens in them in 2016?
I think that the MacBook Air is the cheap one. So why? I don't know. I mean, I don't see him doing it. I think that muddies the water a little bit. It's some real-time follow-up real quick. This is the problem when you talk about things that are happening as you record. It seems like the Intel announcement may just be for low-powered stuff. So only for something that would be like in the MacBook, these chips may not be available for the MacBook Pro class machine yet.
Yeah, aimed at laptops and 2-in-1s.
Yeah, so Apple's not doing any of that stuff except in the MacBook. So all that aside, right, the conversation of like what's going on with the Mac line has lots of open threads right now, and Apple needs to take time not only to release new products, but I think there is a genuine concern on the part of Mac enthusiasts, and I know that I'm the only one here.
Yo, what's up?
Hey, that they're still paying attention, right? Because you had all this noise around the MacBook. You had that great article, I think it was in Mashable with Phil Schiller and all these hardware people, like about the MacBook. Like, we designed the antennas to like work around the speakers, and like we did all this cross team, cross knowledge type stuff to build the best computer we could build, and that was great. And there's been nothing since. And I think there was some excitement around that machine. There was excitement around the Retina iMac 2 years ago. I still want one, but it's been really quiet for a long time. And I have no doubt the Apple, like I truly believe the Mac is still important to Apple. I think it is especially important to somebody like Phil Schiller. It seems like that's his sort of first love a little bit. Like, you're not supposed to have a favorite child, but he kind of secretly does, it seems. I don't think the Mac is going out to pasture anytime soon, but I think there are people who sort of feel like that may be true, or feel that they make their, like, I feel this way a little bit. Like, I make my living on the Mac. Mike, you do too, really.
Yeah, dude, the Mac is important to me. Like,
yeah,
but it's just not my preferred operating system. It's not my preferred platform, but it's the one that, like, I hate to say this, like, I'm stuck with it.
Yeah, high praise from Mike.
I like it, but like, I wish I could do everything on the machines that I like most. But right now, like, I don't want to do that. Like, I've spoken about this many times. So I'm stuck with the Mac. So whilst I'm stuck with it, I want the best stuff that I can get.
Sure. And I think there are people who feel that way. There are people who, like me, like, I make my living on it. It is my preferred OS still. And I feel like I've been left out to dry a little bit. Not that the machine I have isn't fine. Like, I've got a current MacBook Pro. It's great. But it's like the interest has waned, it feels like. And I don't think that's the case, and Apple needs to correct that perception. Real quick, though, we should talk about the MacBook Pro, because Gurman brings up the OLED touch-sensitive function key bar row. He has a name for it, that a dynamic function row, which definitely sounds like an Apple product name. Which is unusual for Gurman. Like, usually product names and stuff are very tight-lipped. Maybe this is just what it's kind of called internally, and it'll be called, Magic Touch.
I think if it doesn't have magic in there, I'll be very surprised.
Yeah.
Either Magic Touch or, I don't know.
Magic Row.
I don't know.
1, 2, 3, Magic Row.
Magic Row.
Rainbow Road.
Rainbow Road.
Oh, no, guys, I got it. The Smart Row.
Yeah.
Smart Row.
Smart
Whatever
Row.
It's called. The name is probably internal. He has sort of, what he talks about has been my biggest fear, and I've written a couple of times about it. You can go read it. That the thing is going to change modes based on the app you're in, and the example he gives is particularly troubling to me. That if you're on the desktop, you see brightness and volume, but if you're in Safari, you would get Find, and iMovie would show clips for cutting, more precise sliders, that sort of thing. My big question around all this, I think Apple's definitely going to do application function keys. My question is, are they going to open up to third parties? I think they will.
Yeah.
I think they have to get buy-in, right? If it's just Apple software, then what's the point? But my bigger question is, like, how is it going to be distracting, right? If I'm command tabbing between Final Cut Pro and Finder back and forth, which I find myself doing, or between Logic and Finder, which I find myself doing several times a week. Is it going to be distracting that things under my fingertips, sort of in the lower corner of my vision, are changing? And I have no doubt that Apple's doing this. I just wonder how weird it's going to be to get used to it. And like, for me, so I use a MacBook Pro, a 15-inch, and here where I record, it's on a stand open to the left of my display. But at home, it's in clamshell mode, tucked behind my Thunderbolt display. And so I'm not even going to get the benefits of it, because I don't type at my MacBook Pro's keyboard unless I'm out and about somewhere. And so, like, all this stuff is great, but my MacBook Pro is on a stand to the left of my display. I'm not going to reach up and, like, I don't think, unless it's really, really good, to, like, make cuts and stuff, because I can do it with the keyboard shortcuts that are already under my fingertips.
Yeah.
So I just wonder how distracting it's going to be, how weird it's going to be to get used to, and then how useful it's going to be to someone like me who uses a MacBook Pro basically like a desktop. And that just puts aside everyone like Mike who uses a true desktop with either the Apple hardware keyboard or a third-party keyboard. Like, this stuff's going to be really locked away to a subset of users, and that's going to limit its adoption. So if the MacBook Air is getting revised with USB-C, does it get this? Like, does Apple try to spread this out quickly? And just lots of questions and no answers, and I'm hoping that Apple puts it all to rest very soon.
All right, so let me say what I think here.
Okay.
I feel like most people are way overthinking this. I think the Dynamic Row is going to be based on the similar idea of the shortcut bar on the iPad. So you know how on top of the software keyboard, you got those extra icons for that developers can program? It's going to be the same principle, I think. There's going to be some fixed buttons for, like on iOS, you got copy and paste. They're always in the same spot. They're always there. It's going to be the same on macOS. You always get like the volume, the brightness, like the system stuff is always going to be there. Then developers are going to have an API, something like UI text input on iOS. They can define, what's it called? UI bar button item with the UI text input assistant stuff from iOS 9. It's basically going to be the same. They can define some shortcuts that appear when their app opens and text input is active. And it's not going to be distracting because it's the same as iOS. Depending on the app that you're using, you get different shortcuts. And I think it's awesome because there's a bunch of stuff on my Mac's keyboard. I mean, I don't use a Mac, but when I look at it, I mean, why do I need to have Launchpad? Why do I need to waste all of these buttons? When
no one needs Launchpad.
Exactly. And it goes back to the Steve Jobs, introduction of the keyboard. The physical keyboards are great, but for some functions, it's better to customize them with software. And I think it's going to be a similar idea to the implementation on iOS 9 and the iPad. And it's going to be nice. And it's going to be fancier because, it's a Mac. Maybe it's going to have colors. It's going to have animations for like sliders, I imagine. I don't know. But it could be possible.
It's, I think part of the reason this is so captivating, even to you who will probably never use it, is that it's something like new to the Mac that's, I agree with you. I think they can borrow a lot from iOS, and iOS does it well, but it's not like Linen, right? Like when they put Linen all over everything in line and broke full screen mode, like that came from iOS, but different than this. This is something new, something innovative, hopefully, and I think that's why everyone is so worked up about it. But I want to see it in action. I do have plans to purchase a new MacBook Pro, go back to the 13-inch, but I want to see Apple build the case for this thing being useful. And the adoption curve is going to probably hurt that, right? You see the same thing on iOS. Right? Apple does something new like Force Touch. It's only on 2 models of phone, and it takes some time for that to kind of trickle down, if I can borrow a phrase, and spread out to everybody. And this will be the same thing, but I don't know. It's interesting. The thing that he wraps up with really caught my eye is that Apple's working with LG to create a new 5K standalone display, and there's been a lot of argument back and forth that USB-C / Thunderbolt 3, which real quickly, the MacBook has USB-C but does not have Thunderbolt. Thunderbolt 3 and USB-C can be bundled over the same connector, over the same wire, if the chipset supports it. So the Core M that's in the MacBook does not. Assumedly, whatever is in the MacBook Air and MacBook Pro would support USB-C and Thunderbolt 3 over the same connector. That's, I think, really confusing to people. I think they maybe should have collapsed that further into one standard. Maybe they will in the future. But if it can be driven over a cable or maybe over 2 cables, then if this standalone 5K monitor, whenever it shows up, like, I'm sold. I really want external Retina. I've gone back and forth a lot over the last year. We've talked about it on the show. I'm talking about the two of you privately of, do I do a Retina iMac at home and then have like a MacBook Air or a MacBook even for when I'm out and about? And what I keep coming back to is that I don't want 2 machines, that I want one machine, a powerful MacBook Pro, so I can have all my stuff with me all the time. I can have all the power with me all the time, and a really nice external setup. So at home I use a Thunderbolt display, rest in peace. And it would be nice to have Retina there. So lots of potential ways to spend my money this fall. And I hope that Apple is going to give us some ways to do that.
It's saving up time, everybody.
It is. It is that time of year. It really stinks because right after WWDC, you start saving. You spend all your money in San Francisco, and then you got to start saving again for new phones.
At least they're not going to do iPads as well this year.
That's true. And, that's when you guys were talking about that, I had that thought. Like, it does kind of break up the purchase cycle a little bit. And I think that having them in the spring is also good for education if it's early enough in the spring. So I think that, the days, what was it? Was it 2 or 3 years ago? We've done this show for so long, I can't even keep track. 2 or 3 years ago, where like there were no product releases until the fall.
Well, it's like that kind of last year as well. I remember in the last few months of the year, I bought an iPhone, an iPad, and an iMac. It was horrible.
Yeah, it may have been 3 years ago, and I think it was the first time that it was really noticeable. And we were like, does Apple still make products? Like, have they stopped? Did something happen and they can't release new things? And so the iPad moving to the spring definitely helps that, those of us who have the vice of buying new phones every year.
If you want to find our show notes for this week, head on over to relay.fm/connected/106. Federico is online at macstories.net and at Viticci on Twitter, VITICCI. Stephen is at 512pixels.net and he is at ISMH. I am at iMyke, IMYKE. I want to thank everybody that became a Relay FM member in the last couple of weeks. Really appreciate it. If you are a member, there are still a few more bonus shows to come out. I put out a huge Reconcilable Differences today with John Roderick joining the cast for the three of them. It's very fun. So if you're a Relay FM member, you can get those shows. You can go to relay.fm/membership to find out more. And I want to thank again our sponsors for this week's episode, the great folk over at Pingdom, Eero, and FreshBooks. Thank you, as always, for listening, and we will be back next time. Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.